Welcome to the Sales Lead Dog Podcast, hosted by CRM technology and sales process expert Christopher Smith, talking with sales leaders that have separated themselves from the rest of the pack. Listen to find out how the best of the best achieve success with their team and CRM technology. And remember, unless you are the lead dog, the view never changes.
Welcome to Sales Lead Dog. My guest for today on the show is Damian Wisniewski. Damian is head of sales for GitKraken. Damian, welcome to Sales Lead Dog.
Thank you very much, Chris.
Excited to have you here, Damian. Tell me a bit about GitKraken.
So GitKraken's been on the market for 15 years. We have a suite of developer tools that help both individual developers and actually more recently engineering leaders both code and manage their coding process. And now with this new world of AI, we're actually moving pretty aggressively into helping engineering leaders track the usage of AI, the ROI, what's working, what's not, et cetera.
That's a huge market. I was just having a conversation earlier this week. We hosted a webinar, our CRM Impact series. And first few episodes we've been doing have been focused primarily on AI. And that was the topic for this recent episode, is that you're unleashing AI in your organization, but you need a way to manage this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. The AI is very attractive because all of a sudden it gives you this, like, for anyone who's ever done any vibe coding, I got very into vibe coding over like the December holidays, and then I went pretty deep. We can talk about that in a bit, but there's this feeling of power that comes with the ability to do so much more than you used to be able to. And slowly, first you jump off the deep end, and then you paddle back towards shore a little bit more, and you realize, wait a minute, I actually need to I need to apply my own sort of like knowledge and understanding and sort of everything that I've learned in my career to what I'm doing to make it actually, to take all this energy and sort of all this computing power, actually sort of point it at the right things. And I think that's the same within an organization, right? It's very exciting at first because it feels like you have access to so much. At the end of the day, you're a sales leader and you got to this position because of your knowledge and your skills. And over time, you realize you really have to layer those back on top of whatever tools you're using, or it's just going to, be unfocused and sometimes do things you don't want.
Yeah. Looking back over your career, Damian, to this point, you've had quite a bit of success. If you could boil it down to three things, what are the three things that have really driven and led to the success you've been able to achieve?
I'm very entrepreneurial by nature. I grew up on a dairy farm, actually. So like when you grow up on a small business, you live the business, right? And actually, one of the key things I had to learn as a young adult was what work-life balance was. I still forget that sometimes, but it's nice to have as a skill. But that sort of drive and that just extreme sense of ownership, I think has really been key because, this will take, into my early career as well, but I spent 4 years at LinkedIn, and act like an owner has always been one of the core tenets of LinkedIn. And that was the one that resonated with me the most, just because that's kind of how I'm built. Particular to me, I had a much more technical background before moving into sales. And so being able to take that for the team, being the one who works more closely with the tech or works more closely with the product and engineering teams, et cetera, that's always been very helpful. And then I think kind of the final thing is just hiring. It's an entire discipline in and of itself. And I was lucky early on in my career to hire a lot of people. And so that really helped me hone, because it's hard to be a coach without a team. When it's the players make the team, so you got to know how to select them.
Hiring there could be it probably is a whole area of study around how to hire. I was able to come across a book, The A+ Method of Hiring, 5 or 7 years ago, completely transformed hiring, because I realized I was doing everything backwards, completely the wrong way. And once I was able to get a handle on that, it's transformative because it is all about your team. So what are some of the strategies you have for building a team in this new world of AI?
Yeah, because I'm so entrepreneurial, and I also should say that I've managed both sides of but my core is really new business. I'm a new business guy through and through. And so I always tend to be sort of on the smaller, scrappier end of things. And so I always index on team players. Listen, as long as you don't do sort of antisocial, you can do bad behavior in an organization, but it's perfectly fine to be just a lone wolf who likes to bring in business in many organizations, because that's what you're there for. I always tell people outside of sales, like I spend a lot of time with salespeople and connecting with them and trying to help them. But there's a component that a salesperson is a widget for turning time into money. That's really the bookings and revenue and et cetera. And so there's definitely tons of people who do that don't just sort of do their thing. When I think about, though, that a small team that's still learning, and I think all of a sudden everyone is on a small team that's still learning because all of a sudden, like the rules have completely changed. It's just like you need people who are willing to go out and experiment and try new things and then bring that knowledge back and share it so that everyone can then go back out and experiment with other things, right? And so all of a sudden, I do think that you really have to think about, my team is like everything is all new. And wherever you are sort of on that AI adoption curve, if you're not pretty far along, you're behind. And I can say that with authority. 6 months ago, like in November of 2025, I was a dinosaur and I didn't realize it. And I started this project with a guy's now a friend of mine. I'm about the midway point in my career. I've just turned 47. I'm about to go back to my 25-year college reunion, which is a bit of a wake-up call. And watching him work was the very first time in my career where I felt behind. Like I was always used to being ahead. Right. I was the one who was more technical. I was the one who was new. I was behind, and I did not like that feeling one bit. I didn't like it.
Oh, yeah.
And that's part of what made me just dive into the deep end and be like, I'm going to learn this stuff. I'm going to learn how to code with it, but then I'm also going to learn how to apply it to my own career and work because I saw how powerful it was.
How'd you get started in sales? What's the backstory there?
So I was much more technical before business school. I was the guy who talked to the clients on, one side and was like coding on the other, right? I did that for a while. And then over time we specialized. And every time I had the chance to make to sort of split off, I chose the client side. It was more fun. At the time I was working with some major retailers. I was working with Sears, Gap, JCPenney. And it was just really fun. It was more fun for me to learn about their business, which for me it just had infinite possibilities. And this is just the way I felt about it. But for me, I felt like the tech only went so deep. And there's a lot you can build with it and things like that. But I found the people much more fascinating. And so I worked with a bunch of people with MBAs. I worked at your typical overeducated Boston software company, right? And everyone had MBAs, and I like some of the polish that these folks have. Let me go get some of that for myself. And I went to business school, and I ended up and this is actually not a surprise because business schools, this is a whole nother topic, but business schools are very personality focused. And so kind of not surprisingly, I went into a very entrepreneurial program at MIT where they said, like, they were very focused on the idea that if you were building a business, you didn't really have a business until you had a customer. And so to do that, you have to know how to sell, like if you're going to do B2B. And I just took to it. I loved it. It was like all the excitement of like solving a problem or implementing an entire project, but it all came down to like one yes, like that one moment. So I ended up, I was like, I actually want to do this. Like I ran the school t-shirt stand when we had the MIT logos, and I'd track people down in the hall because I knew that they were having like a big event the next week or they're having a conference. And I was all over that school. And I lived it for a year, and I was like, I want to do this as a job. And of course, I have bad timing, so I graduated into 2009 when the first time I graduated was 2001, which was also a bad time. So yeah.
I started this business. I started Impeller in 2011.
Okay. Yeah.
And launching into a segment that just got completely crushed in 2008. And so we had to pivot and do all the stuff you normally have to do as a startup. And that was a tough time.
Yeah, it really was. I was lucky because I was switching into sales. And so I had to sell myself, which is how everyone starts in sales, right? I had to sell myself. Took me many months, but I talked LinkedIn into giving me my first AE1 role right out of business school, which was kind of I was definitely like, I was not the norm in their hiring class. This is at the time when there were about 100 sales reps in the entire company. And this was just the second time that they had hired SMB reps, and I started as a 8-month, moved across the country, but was, waking up at 6 a.m. to sell into the East Coast, into Boston, and did that for a year, became a manager, became a mid-market, and then an enterprise manager. And it was a pretty wild ride. It was the 4 years that LinkedIn went from 450 employees to 4,500, IPO'd. I mean, it was wild. And I was like, wow, I want to be able to do this. In the same way that you look at a sale and it's like, either you close it or you don't. Like that sort of rush of like, I built this whole organization, I built this whole thing. And so I went over and I did that for Good Hire, which is now a part of Checker. But I was like the first sales rep, slinging background checks and brought over a couple people and built up an entire org and business from there. And then it was off to the races. So yeah, that's
awesome. Why do you think they tapped you to be your first sales leadership role? Did they tell you why they wanted you to make that switch?
It was a kind of a, what's the right way to say? It was sort of like, as a steady progression, right? We became team leads first. There was this idea that sort of people were promoted kind of by their peers. And I think for me personally, because of where I was in my career, I'd had like different experiences. So the fact that I like hopped in and learned how to sell gave me the opportunity to like become a manager and sort of apply some of those other things, because I've been a project manager for a while, for example. So some of the core skills that you need in management, like keeping track of a bunch of people, making sure things happen on time, right? Like I was lucky enough to come in with some of those skills, but I had to learn, I had to earn it and I had to learn it.
Hey, we're taking a quick break to thank you for listening to and supporting the Sales Lead Dog podcast. I want to take a moment and tell you about my book, CRM Shouldn't Suck. If your CRM feels more like a black hole for data than something that actually helps your team sell, you're not alone. The book breaks down why CRMs fail for so many businesses and what you can do about it. No fluff, just real strategies that work. So go to crmshouldn'tsuck.com to order your free copy right now. That's right, we're giving it away. And while you're there, take 2 minutes to check out the CRM Impact Score. It's a quick diagnostic that shows you how your CRM is really performing, where it's helping you and where it's hurting you. You'll get a personalized report with clear, actionable next steps you can start right away to maximize your CRM investment. We've also got blogs, videos, and a bunch of other resources to help you finally get the results you were promised when you bought your CRM. And if you're watching on YouTube, hit that like button and make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes of Sales Lead Dog. Okay, let's get back to this episode of the Sales Lead Dog podcast.
So shifting the conversation back to AI, I'm really excited to have this conversation with you because it is such a relevant topic today that everyone's trying to find their path through this uncharted territory. It's brand new. It's wide open. There's all kinds of paths we can go down. What are some of the things that you've learned so far in this journey, this 6-month journey you've been on? What are some of the key things you've learned that you could share with us?
Yeah, I think we're at a wild time because everyone is trying a bunch of different things. Like there's this mass explosion of just creativity and people trying to start new businesses and come up with new products and come up with new approaches. And so it's a very exciting time to be in the space. And it really feels to me like I just rebooted my career because I'm starting over from scratch. I'm starting over how I think about my role as a sales leader, how I think about myself as a seller, how I think about my team as sellers. I would urge people and not everyone has this like excitement or interest but I think for people who are like, I would like to have more control again. I don't want to buy all these tools. I don't want to do implementations. I don't want to, I just want, and this could be you, this could be someone on your team. For example, like one of your person who runs your CRM or someone in those organizations. But I think that giving yourself license to learn the technology and to say, hey, I want to do this for myself, and actually taking a page out of the book of your engineering team is like, it's really empowering. And so what I mean by that is taking a structured, like stepping back and thinking about what you do as a sales leader and as a salesperson, and then saying like, hey, can I apply this to the things that are already happening in my business? So I'll give you a concrete example. When I started at GitKraken, I got access to the call recordings like the night before. Like I started on a Wednesday for just sort of timing reasons. And so Tuesday night I got access and I hooked myself up to all the call transcripts and I downloaded them and I put them through kind of my personal methodologies around like, how do I want discovery? Like, how do I want you to think about discovery? How do I want you to think about solution fit? How do I want you to think about kind of those sort of standard sales components? And I was basically like, okay, like I'm going to run this through several times and I want you to fill out the playbook, right? And I want you to like, to look at what's been working and what's not been working. And I want to walk in on day one. And this is something that used to take like 3 months. I want to be able to walk in on day one as like with a playbook where I could sell this. I was like 75 to 80% there. I'm not going to say it was like the world's best thing ever, but I saved myself 2, possibly 3 months, right? Because you can listen to call recordings. You can listen to, I don't know, 8 a day if you want, but like you're not going to make your way through like 200, 400 sales calls, right? But if you think about someone sitting there and listening to those or reading the transcripts and you say, hey, these are like the 5 major pains that we solve, or this is what I've been told the ICP is. Does that actually match what's happening with what's going on the phone, et cetera, right? So, and you just sort of take this, you say, hey, like I would love a situation where I had someone who could just listen to every call and score it on like a pain funnel, right?
Yeah.
And you now have that person. That person is on your desktop and the tools are available. And so if you think about it in sort of that structured way, you can start to feed these things through and actually come up with repeatable results. And I think when people hear AI, they think about things that people post on LinkedIn, or they think about the things images that look kind of wacky, or, you can tell when you use like an LLM, when you use it as generative, right? As you're like, write me an email, write me a story, write me a whatever. People notice them and they see them and they see the patterns. But actually, I think that these technologies are really good for is summarization and scoring and sort of collecting data and analyzing it. And so if instead you say, hey, I want you to look at every call file I have. I want you to say, is it a discovery call? Is it a demo call? Is it a negotiation call? And then only look at the discovery calls. We'll look at the demos later. For the discovery calls, I want you to tell me the 5 things that make that move on to demo, or the 5 things on the demo that actually mean that there's a negotiation call afterwards. And that's the sort of thing. And if you think about that, that's just one example. But when I say a rush of power, you didn't have to do this big implementation. There weren't a bunch of integration calls. There wasn't a big contract. You sat down and you looked at the data you had and you ran it through and you processed it.
Yeah. It's amazing to me. When you talk about like, that's a great use case for AI, for like if you're in a sales leadership role, there's no way you can listen to all these calls and do the analysis, especially when you have a team of 10 or 20 or 30 are all calling all day long. There's no way. But you can set up an agent that's doing that's measuring for certain KPIs. And when you see something that, hey, it's not aligning with our expectations, let's look at that. Let's start dissecting those. Now you're focusing in where you're going to have the impact. And now I'm going to be a far more effective sales manager, sales coach, than if I'm wasting all my time listening to recordings and trying to figure this stuff out on my own. There's just, you might be able to do that for one person on your team, maybe 2, but you're not going to be able to do it for a large team. It does not scale. And so that to me is the element that AI brings to sales leadership. I think early on, everyone's excited, like, oh, I can have it, help me write emails. I can have it generate a PowerPoint.
Yeah.
Big whoop these days. Like we're way past that. It's into this next level stuff where like listening to calls, or let's analyze our data and identify, where are my opportunities to drive revenue? I've got a whole bunch of data to sift through. Where should I be focused on as a seller? Based upon all this data that we have, 80% of trying to be effective salesperson is managing your time, probably more than 80%. So where let me focus on the ones that truly have the potential to move forward. That's where I want to spend my time. The ones that align best with our strategic goals. That to me is the exciting stuff with AI as we go out. It's these agents that are working 24/7 behind me to feed me what I need.
I had one of the first commands. I actually don't need it anymore because now I know where the deals are at. But the first couple of weeks, I had a make me smart command that just looked over the last week of like call reports. So I was like, what do I need to know for this meeting with the CFO? Like just make me, and it would go through, because the way I have my thing set up is it looks at the raw call transcript and then it makes a report for every call. And the report's going to have the important stuff. So it could go back. But you said about like, what do I need to know as a seller? We're a developer tool, right? We're an engineering tool. And so people want to see what we can do. When we sell to a CTO, VP of engineering, they want to see with their data, what are the insights you're bringing? What does it mean when you say, I'm going to tell you how well you're using AI, or which of your developers are the most advanced, and which ones should the less advanced ones be turning to learn? What does that mean? And so I have data in the CRM. I have data in the call recordings. I have data in Amplitude from the clicks, trying to put that together for one customer, like one prospect. Like that's work. Like that is a lot of work that I do not have time for. But this is another. There's a couple things as you think about what you could do with AI. There's 3 letters that I want you to pay attention to, which are MCP.
Mm-hmm.
Like MCP is basically the map that Amplitude Confluence has an MCP, like your CRM will have an MCP. That's a map that Claude Code, that Codex, that Gemini can use to say, give me that stuff. It's everything that they'll need. And so what I do, I need to understand what's going on with these trials. I've got 20 trials going on and I have zero visibility into, are these people logging in? So it goes to our CRM and says, how did the trial setup call go? Was there a shared success plan? Was there a bug on the first call when they tried to do the setup? So that's one piece of data. And then it says, I want you to go into Amplitude and I want you to make me a graph of day by day what people are doing in that, because I want that in the Excel sheet. And then I want you to go back to the CRM and look at all these other dates and times and how long did it take, et cetera. And all of a sudden, I know what's going on with every trial.
Yeah.
It's a whole new world.
For those of you who don't know what MCP stands for, it stands for Model Context Protocol.
I had forgotten, so thank you for...
Yeah, that's okay. It's an open standard that let AI models like ChatGPT, Claude, whatever, securely connect to each other and get access to their tools, data sources, systems through that unified interface, through that connection. And that is the future of AI. Yeah. The way, like right now, everything, it's really the first phase of AI has been around these individual tools and the models. But the problem with those is I don't want to connect my agents directly to my data sources. I need to have guardrails in place. I need to have security. I need to have control. That's what MCP does, is I can build an MCP server or connection point, whatever you want to call that I wrap around my data sources, be it CP, like CRM, like you were talking about, or it could be my data warehouse, or it could be whatever. That's controlling what I'm going to expose to the agents that are connecting to it. So now me as a VP of IT or CIO, CTO, whatever, now I've got the control, the risk management in place through the MCP, but now I can turn my agents loose on that in a controlled way. And that to me is one of the most exciting things in AI right now, that not getting a lot of outside of the technology groups, not a lot of people talking about MCP.
It's incredible because I did a startup during the pandemic, which is when I had to dive back into coding. And so I did actually have to work with an API from a CRM. And it took me a couple of weeks because you got to look at the things and you got to get the field names right. And it's a lot of work. I hooked up to our current CRM in half an hour. I don't know. I just said, hey, go figure it out. And it was like Boom, done. There is something about guardrails, and because I did bring up call recording, I do want to say these tools give you power. You do want to put in your own guardrails. People are very sloppy, like from a hygiene perspective about what calls they allow recorders into. So one of the first things I would recommend is that if you go down this path, make sure that you tell, and there's things, it'll depend if it's Codex or Claude, or which particular both model and kind of tool you're using, but there are things called rules. You can say, and that's basically information that gets fed in with every time you ask a question or you tell it to do a thing. And when I talk about sort of building these things, that's what I mean. You want to have a rule set. There's things called skills. You want to have your entire playbook in a skill, because that tells anytime you ask a question, anytime you give a command, that's the thing that actually sort of brings the playbook and slides it across the desk along with your request and whatever data comes through. But rules like do not process call recordings that only have internal people, right? If you're working in a small company, I've seen this, you might want to have special rules, like maybe the CEO or someone. The VP of sales is not so good about not recording calls that should not be recorded. So you might want to put a rule in place that or even a staff list.
Oh yeah.
This name is the CEO. This name is a rep. This name is etc. If I ask you about product information, this is the guy to go to. Anything that Jeff, he's my product guy, right? Jeff is he's canonical. If he says it does the thing, it does the thing. That's not the same as if Damian says it. It's not the same as if one of Damian's reps says it. I'm stitle pretty new, but if Jeff says it, it does the thing, right? So you can do rules like that. You can say, unless the CEO is on the call with an external, with someone with a sales rep, don't look at that call, because that could save you a lot of trouble down the road.
Yeah.
I will also tell you, I have a rule. I had to build a rule. I'll read this one to you. I thought I got a kick out of it. When someone is no longer with the company, please state they are no longer with the company. Do not speculate on, report, or include reasons for their departure. Supplies to all output, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Because it's just a calculation machine. It's not good at politics.
No.
It will pick things up and you're like, will you please stop putting that?
Yeah, no, that's the thing with AI that I try to get people to understand, that it's regurgitating, right? And oftentimes without context. And what you're talking about, the rules and the playbook, you have to give it context. You have to put guardrails in place. Otherwise, it's going to regurgitate whatever you ask it to regurgitate. And it's going to state it as fact. And so keep that in mind. Shifting gears, Damian, CRM, do you love it or do you hate it?
I used to love it. I'm trending towards hate.
Yeah. What's changed? So what did you used to love, and what eroded that love for you when it comes to CRM?
Just drift. Think back in my day, CRM did one thing or two things. It sort of did those things very well. You knew which CRM was for which types of company, which types. And, they've tried to converge, but in converging, they have just built too many things on. And now we have a whole new wave of AI. And it's really funny. You can see some of the internal conflicts with AI in the CRMs. So you look at it, you're like, why does this new bolted on agent module not interact with any of the history of the CRM, like any of the reporting, any of the whatever that you've seen in the CRM for 20 years? Probably because the group just went off and built it. And then, but they did it because it wasn't going to get done if it had to go through the normal channels. That's been the bane of my existence the last couple of weeks.
Yeah. How do you see AI changing CRM? Because my belief is it's going to completely transform CRM. We're going to be talking about CRM in a totally different way. In the same way that when CRM was first getting started, we had Goldmine and Act. It was all about contact management. That's kind of how I look at CRMs of today. It's not going to be long before we look at them like Goldmine and Act from 20 years ago.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that the CRM players are going to keep trying to add in more things, right? Which is going to be a problem. But you don't need to use their CRM, right? I personally just use Cursor and I connect to the CRM and then I process the data in which I want it. And you do need that data store. And I think there's another thing that's really important as you think about what are you doing here with these AI agents, with the models? You have your data that lives in the CRM. And I always want it to live in the CRM. The CRM, that's what the CRM is there for. You have sort of your interpretation of the data. That's what I'm advocating, is building up a playbook and making it available to your AI, having rules, having guardrails, having interpretations, having things you want to checklists. But then there's also just sort of the AI itself, the model, the brain. And I think that as people swap, I strongly suggest that if you are using Cursor, try using Codex. Just flip it over to Codex and try using Codex in the same thing. Flip it over to Gemini, because it's once you realize that there's the model's the horsepower, but what you have built is sort of actually the IP, and that sort of like what makes it what it is. Like, it really helps free your mind from like, there's this weird intelligence out there. You're like, no, it's just a different source of power that I'm hooking in. And so that's what I would love for the CRMs to do, is to not try to like be the power company, just keep my data and like, let me use it, but I'm sure that that's not what's going to happen.
David, we're at our time here on Sales Lead Dog. I really appreciate you coming on the show. It's been great chatting with you. This is, I think, a great topic to talk about. It's very relevant for today. People want to reach out and connect with you. If they want to learn more about GitKraken, what's the best way for them to do that?
Just look at my LinkedIn profile.
Excellent. You can get that in our show notes at impellercrm.com/Sales Lead Dog, where you'll get not only this episode, but our close to 200 episodes now of Sales Lead Dog. Be sure to check that out. Be sure to connect with Damian. Be sure to subscribe so you get all our future episodes. We'd greatly appreciate that level of support. Damian, thank you again for coming on the show, and welcome to the Sales Lead Dog Pack.
Thank you.
As we end this discussion on Sales Lead Dog, be sure to subscribe to catch all our episodes. On social media, follow us on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. Watch the videos on YouTube, and you can also find our episodes on our website at impellercrm.com/Sales Lead Dog. Sales Lead Dog is supported by Impeller CRM, delivering objectively better CRM for business, guaranteed.